Welcome to this episode of the Leading in Dentistry podcast. I'm Dr. Wes Eggett. After spending the last 20 years in a variety of leadership positions, and as a student of leadership myself, I started Leading in Dentistry to share what I found and to continue learning with you. If anything from this episode stands out, check out the show notes, our online courses, or one-on-one coaching on leadingindentistry.com. Welcome back to the Leading in Dentistry podcast. I'm Dr. Wes Eggett. For those of you new to the podcast, I'm a practicing associate dentist just outside of Denver, Colorado, and I started Leading in Dentistry to help develop the leadership skills of each team member in the dental office, not just the business owner. And today we do have a business owner here for an interview. This is Dr. Josh Sanchez. Josh, say hello to the folks at home.
Hello, glad to be here, Wes.
Josh and I are old dental school buddies. And it's been a couple of years, and I just wanted to hear, this is our opportunity to just catch up. And I'm doing it under the guise of having you on the podcast to share your
You
share
can
your
come out to
leadership tips and
California and
tricks.
visit me, Wes. It's okay.
I would love
with the
to.
family.
I would love to. Next time I'm out there, it's going to happen.
I love that.
But yeah, go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself. I mean, I know some things, but tell us the rest.
Sure. I guess to introduce myself to everybody else. So I grew up in California and around Santa Cruz area. I currently have a dental practice here in Santa Cruz. I bought about 2 years ago. We built it from scratch, essentially with no funds and just hard work and grit, ups and downs and all that, which we'll probably get into a little later. I also run a nonprofit called Dentistry for Vets in Marina. So every Friday I'm there helping veterans, but there are other dentists there who are currently there helping patients as well. And I am active in the dental society and just pretty much active in a lot of things. Anything helps advance our profession.
That's awesome. Yeah. That's awesome. So you have a very interesting story about how you came to own this practice and the ups and downs of all that. And I don't know if we really want to get into too much of that, how much you want to share about that experience.
I don't mind. I'd rather have that out there so that if people are thinking about opening up their practices, that they know what they're going to get into. I didn't know what I get into. I just took a chance and I had to just sink or swim.
Yeah.
But I would rather share that story. About me, I come from a pretty humble family. I'm first generation doctor, first generation everything in my family. Not a lot of generational wealth I can get to building. So everything we had to do was just what we can make ourselves, right? In 2019 to 2020, after dental school, when Wes and I graduated, I had gone to a residency in upstate New York, and the whole COVID thing, I'm sure everybody experienced it differently. But then I decided to come back to California. One of the doctors who works here in Watsonville, he actually wanted an associate, but more of a hygienist, because nobody was hiring associate doctors at the time. I don't know if you remember this, Wes, because COVID, there was, nobody was really seeing patients, and he was really behind. So he asked me to come back to his practice. At the time, I was actually thinking about doing a pediatric residency. I had contacted the school. I had my application to submit, but I didn't think I'd get a very good education during COVID because of how everything was locked down. It just didn't seem worth it at the time. So I worked with Dr. Grillo for 2 years as his associate doctor. I learned a lot from him. So one thing I can say, I guess, to your listeners too, coming out of school, if you're going to choose between jobs initially, at least find somebody who's going to take care of you and mentor you. It's not all about money. A lot of corporations, a lot of these places will give you incentives and they'll follow you with a carrot, and then they will get you trapped and you will be hating your life and hating dentistry. And that's not what you want. Always choose to develop yourself before you develop your finances. Your finances will follow after you develop yourself. I guess a little side note there.
I think that's super good information for anyone who's not even in the dental, not just the dentists out there, because the podcast also speaks to the leadership of every team member in the dental office, right? And for everyone who's looking to develop themselves, I mean, that's where leadership really starts. And before you're trying to grab that, for the dentist trying to own a practice, or for anyone else in the business trying to take ownership over what they're doing, is that self-development is something that's super key first, right? So that's awesome. Sorry to interrupt, but can continue.
No worries. So the next step, after 2 years of working with Dr. Grillo as his associate, he has this other building he bought, and it was vacant for maybe 15 to 20 years. There was a dentist that previously practiced here. It had a dark room. It had an old compressor, a few old chairs, really kind of broken down. There's carpets in the operatories. peach walls, teal countertops, just a
Mm,
gorgeous 1970s. You
mm.
could smell it if dust and museum kind of
I can
smell.
smell it right now.
Yeah, exactly. So he told me, I think he kind of pushed me to it. He's like, hey, somebody else interested. Do you want it? I don't think that was the case, but anyways, I told him absolutely, like a chance at becoming, a practice owner. And then he offered a pretty sweet deal for it. Everything inside was kind of, older, but he said, hey, for 20 grand, a handshake, pay me back when you get it. It's yours. And that's what I did. I shook his hand right there. And then he said, July 1st, you can take over the lease. He rents the space to me.
Sure.
So we did that. And after work, I just got to work because I had a kid on the way, my first daughter.
Hmm.
And I had a lot of pressure because at the time I was just working as an associate part-time and a little bit the nonprofit. And where else do you get more time, right? You have to find it somewhere. So I would literally come here after work as an associate working all day and buy with my check maybe a couple of boxes of floorboards, take it from Lowe's, bring it in here, and just start on one room and work until I just fell asleep. I've slept in this office so many times. I can't even believe it now looking back how crazy it was. Me and my wife moved into a trailer, and this trailer was leaking. This trailer was just awful too. We renovated that a little bit with what we could, and we had our daughter in that trailer for a whole year. But slowly after 4 months, well, during 4 months of being an associate, kind of like trying to build up my practice, I was trying to apply for an SBA loan. Now, all the older doctors tell you, oh yeah, banks will know you're a doctor, you're a dentist, you can get money like nothing. Not the case. We started our practice, and 10 months in, we ended up getting a micro loan. But the supplies that were here, they were things that the old doctor was kind of, not the old doctor, but the doctor here, because he would come here once in a while and see patients. So there was a lot of things inside here that were like expiring soon if we didn't use them as well.
Hmm.
So I guess long story short, like when we were going through this, we opened up the practice with no money, just me, my wife, and then my baby up front. My baby would be in the high chair right behind my wife, who was a receptionist. I told her, there's no way you can learn dental billing and all this stuff. She got so mad. She taught herself how to bill, taught all my staff how to bill. And then I've never doubted her since. She's actually currently at my office manager. Although she's at home with our girls, she comes every Thursday. My mom takes care of her girls, and she kind of catches up and kind of helps the office keep moving too. So it's definitely nice having a partner in that aspect who's on the same page and supportive. But like I said, it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. That trailer I told you about, Wes, I don't know if I told you, but during those floods that happened in 2022, it got
Hmm.
destroyed. And now we went from having a state, at least somewhere to be that was like lower rent and stuff, to having pretty much being homeless. We had very little income because my office had no patients, no loan, and I was working, a few days at the nonprofit and trying to get this place up and running, working on this place. So me and my wife actually moved into the back office here for like 4 months on an air mattress.
Wow.
We had a Ninja cooker, and it was tough because my staff would come in the morning. I'd wake up and just like go like do this, and maybe had like 2-3 patients a day. Now, if you have 2-3 patients a day, you're not paying yourself. You
Yeah.
are just hoping that things will get snowball and get better. But now looking at us, we got that micro loan, and I'm happy that we got into practice ownership at that. That number is like $100,000. But when that money came in, one of the chairs broke, the compressor broke, the vac
Oh,
broke, the sensor broke, like all within 3 or 4 months. In fact, when I got the loan initially, I had to ask them for the funds faster because my sensor broke. And if you can't take x-rays, you can't diagnose.
came
So I
on.
had gone through all these trials, and it felt like, it's like buying a boat with holes in it. And I just patched the holes. It taught me a lot. It really taught me, because if I had like $500,000 to begin with, I
Sure.
would have bought things that I didn't need. I would have never known how to spend that money. I would never know how to budget. Sometimes misfortunes in life happen to us to teach us what we really need and to give us resilience. And that really happened with me and my wife. Like, I don't think there's anything that can happen that we can't get through now. Like, I've been through it all. Like, you can't hit me with anything more,
Sure.
and I learned how to plumb. I learned how to do floors. I learned how to paint, all these things that I never imagined I would be doing. I have a toolbox in my office how to fix pretty much anything inside the office.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I never imagined. I thought when you became a dentist, that was it. You're just chilling the whole time, and not the case. But now I have 3 operatories that are plumbed in really good shape. It's a very modern office. I'm really proud of this place. I don't know if I ever showed you the office. I'll probably have to send you some pictures and see what
Sure.
it is. But we built the sign ourselves, and just people come in here and they really love it. It's a very modern, open, and just comfortable place to be. We rock out with music. My staff is great. I had to go through so many different cohorts of staff before I found the ones that kind of clicked, and we're just a great team here. We work
That's
together
awesome.
well. So that's a
So
little bit about it.
yeah, no, you have an absolutely fascinating story. And I remember with the first time that we were catching up, it was like about a year ago, a little
Sure.
less than. And I mean, it was just blowing me away. You call people from dental school and say, "Hey, how you doing?" They say, "Yeah, this is the job I'm up to," or this is what my clinic's like and stuff. And the backstory of what you have gone through to get to where you are, it speaks volumes about your character and what you brought to your practice. And so for the listeners out there, Josh has gone through and done the Teach Leadership Model assessment. So we sent his staff some questions about the different parts of the Teach Leadership Model, which are trust, expectations, accountability, consistency, and heart. For me, it's like the anatomy of leadership, and trying to get his staff to grade him on those different areas to see what type of how they would gauge his leadership development in those spots. And I'm so grateful that you helped beta test all that, and thank you for that. And what's interesting is that in that survey, one of the things we ask about is heart. So first of all, you got the highest score out of anyone who's ever done the survey, which is awesome. So your staff absolutely loves you, which is great.
That's good.
But also,
I'm happy for that.
but the aspect of heart, I mean, that shows in everything in the Teach Leadership Model. Like, you can go through and develop your ability to have trusting relationships, set clear expectations, hold people accountable, do things consistently. But you would be a robot as a leader. But you brought so much heart, and you bring so much heart to your team that they can't look at you and see your story without knowing that your blood, sweat, and tears is in your practice and what you're trying to achieve. And I feel like that is such an important lesson for leaders, not just the business owners, but anybody out there to understand, is that when people feel that you are passionate and that you're bringing a level of dedication and commitment, and it's not just for you, it's for them. I mean, you are a living example of the embodiment of that passion, because when you have heart and you do things with heart, it's not just you don't need people to be excited about dentistry necessarily, but your passion for what you do helps them be passionate about other things. And it may not be being a dental assistant, but being passionate in general. You show them what that zest for life is, that spice of life. And I feel like you do great at everything in the leadership journey that you had, but that, I think, is what really sets you apart. I think that's your superpower. So I appreciate you sharing that with us, because it's a good example, regardless of anyone's position. What type of commitment are you willing to bring to the challenge that you're trying to overcome?
I think it's not having a plan B. All in, man. If you're all in, you burn your ships. There's no retreat. You're either going through it or you're dying, and there's no dying. So,
sure.
But to the aspect of leadership, because I've thought about this a lot since I follow you obviously on Facebook and stuff too. I click your stuff and listen to your videos and how you break down leadership. It's really interesting to think of it from the perspective that you bring it and break it down into digestible chunks, because most people don't think of it that way. And it made me really reflect. Every time I look at your stuff, I reflect on who I want to be, how I, got into the position I am, and the respect of my staff. And in the beginning, I didn't. As an associate doctor, I was trying to be friends with everybody and buddy, everybody, and you find out that there's not really respect in that. It's not that you have to be higher than anybody, but you have to have boundaries as leaders. You can't really go out and be best friends with all your staff. It ruins a dynamic, at least in my experience and from what I've been told by some mentors of mine. You can have the staff all out, but you can't be like, hey, every Friday we're gonna go drink. Sometimes that doesn't work. Maybe some offices does, But one thing I found, especially talking to you initially about leadership too, I've tried to empower my staff. I remember you talking about that, one of your things. And you can ask my staff. I tell them, don't bring me problems, bring me solutions. I want you guys to think about what you're doing in here. I don't want you to be doing it mindlessly. And every time they do come up with a solution, man, I hype them up. I high five them. Like, I make sure everybody
Mhm.
knows that thinking outside the box, that coming up with solutions instead of just problems and like being a robot and just trying to get through the day, being present, that all plays into it. And then, yeah, you're right. My staff knows what I've been through. One of my staff, pretty much all of my assistants came out of assisting school, either a year or right out of assisting school. So they had no real reference for anything else. And I preferred that way because bad habits come from other offices and jaded because other doctors might not treat people well, not have those abilities. But my assistant, I have currently my lead assistant, she was with us since the beginning. And when it was just me, her, and my wife, my baby would be crying in the back. She'd go in the back and take her gloves off and go hold my daughter,
Mhm.
and come back. So she knows, like, I didn't just get everything we're getting. It's not something that was just handed to me. It was something we earned, and that we're continually trying to get and grow. And I'm not a flashy person. I drive the same car I had since undergrad. I live humbly, and I just want to do well for my kids and take care of my staff too. And they know that I got their back. If they have their kids sick, I say, okay, you stay home. We'll figure it out. I got their back, and they know that. And at the same time, it reciprocates because of that. And I've proven it. I've shown it, and it goes both ways.
Yeah, so I have a question about that, about the staff, because first of all, that's key, right? Knowing that there's that trust and that relationship there. I mean, you do that with heart, but also that establishes a certain level of trust. And even the
Sure.
boundaries, that comes back to trust as well. When we, in a previous episode, we talked about Brene Brown and her braving model. And it's what she calls the anatomy of trust. So the same way that I do the anatomy of leadership, she has the anatomy of trust. It's kind of where I got that from. And the first B in that braving acronym is boundaries. And if you are able to set and respect boundaries, that establishes trust. So it's not necessarily that, I don't want to go out and spend time with my staff because I'm trying to be a jerk or I'm high and mighty, but having that separation also as the leader allows them to have some space to be themselves too, right? So like my staff are really big on playing Wordle. And so we'll all do the Wordle and figure out who's done the Wordle for the day.
Sure.
And sometimes I'll go in the lunchroom and I'll start playing Wordle with them over
Yeah.
lunch, try to figure out, who can get the puzzle fastest. And sometimes I walk into the break room and I'm thinking, I shouldn't be here. You guys need some space right now. Like this is your zone, right? To let them develop as a team, right?
Yeah.
But so anyway, that's a long-winded way to get back to what you were talking about, which is you've worked with a lot of different staff, and you've had the one assistant that's been with you since the beginning, but you've had numerous cohorts, you said earlier.
Yes,
right?
I guess I talked about that.
Yeah. So what lessons have you learned in the mistakes made, lessons learned?
Attitude.
Yeah, that type of thing that's been a big deal. And also speak to the team members out there that what makes the difference for you as a business owner when you're looking for someone who doesn't have to be the team lead, but they can take ownership over where they are. What difference does that make for you? And that all of that wrapped into one big question. Josh, hit it.
All right, so I guess I'll address your first question. Probably the background would be, I feel like I've hired staff in the beginning, and I really had to learn what I was looking for. Because at first you're just looking for somebody to help.
Yeah.
And you don't just, okay, can you do assisting? Yeah, most people can do assisting. However, I've had staff who've done like quit and then ask for the job back and then say they'll never do it again, then quit again. I've had staff doing dentistry, wasting my materials after hours while I'm in the office, and things that they can't be doing legally on themselves.
Okay.
And I've had those kind of things happen, but it revolves around respect and attitude. When I'm looking for people to hire in my office, I want to see people who have humility, and I want to see people who are respectful and kind. I ask them about those things. For example, when I do interviews for Western U, periodically, I'll ask them who's your biggest support of getting here. I want them to show gratitude. I want them to reflect on that kind of stuff. But as far as hiring staff, it's kind of a gut feeling too. There's one lady I worked here for a day, and in my stomach I said, not it, just not it. I don't know what it is, but sometimes you just got to trust your instincts too. And that develops over time. But as far as, who I have now, They do what they have to do. Yeah, there's been times where I've had to reprimand and pull them aside, but I never yell. I don't yell at my staff. I bring them aside, say, hey, look, this is what's going on. Why is this happening? Like, what don't you know? Usually it's like, oh, I didn't know. I'm like, okay, now you know. There's no more excuses. We know now how to do this. But if you don't know how to do something, ask me how to do it. Ask somebody how to do it. Don't just make it up or guess or things like that. Because sometimes they'll do things and again, going away from this mindless work attitude versus being proactive thinking, and especially for the benefit of the practice. I always tell them, like, this place, we grow this place and I have them invested in this. And I think they take pride in being here. A lot of our patients who come in, they have anxiety, and we pride ourselves on being in that office. They can take anybody in here and convert them from being anxious and not wanting dental treatment to being happy they're here. And it is the attitude, and it does come down, like, not bringing everything you have outside into the office. When I come in here, I tell myself, I'm going to have a great day. I'm going to help people. This is what I'm here for. I'm so blessed to be in this career, but having that mentality, I think it permeates to everybody else. And yeah, some staff I have are a little bit more rainy and cloudy, but it's hard because sunshine breaks through those too.
Mm-hmm. Kill them with
Let me
kindness,
show you. Let me tell you one story. Actually, just popped in my head. Speaking of
it.
which, I one day, I don't know what it was. Must have been a Wednesday, and my staff, I don't know what it was. Everybody was just kind of blah, just sad. Like, we had a block an appointment. The patient didn't come, and I wanted to get them out of this funk because we still had two more patients, and just it didn't feel right now. It was permeable. You can feel it. And I went downstairs into the basement area. I found a hockey stick and a ball, and I got up and I said, everybody come over here, have a team meeting. And they all thought, like, oh God, what do we do? I said, first one to make this ball in the cup across the floor gets $20. Holy hell. First shot, my receptionist makes it. She's from upstate New York. She shoots it, makes in the cup. Everybody went wild. The rest of the day was great. And actually the rest of the week was great. But just little things like that. I mean, at $20, but man, like, just doing things like that, sometimes silly things, it really helps. But I'm always trying to do that in my office. Morale's good, our stuff's good right now, but when those times come, you gotta just be able to pull everybody out. You gotta be that pull everybody out of the mud. But that's what I try to do.
So I have a question for you. Given your ability to develop those relationships with your team and also know how to put those boundaries in place, and it sounds like you balance that really well. You can walk that tightrope. In order to do that and to develop those leadership skills, it seems like it's something that does come very naturally to you. Is there anything that you do to try to develop those skills? I mean, do you read books about it, or is it something that just has come naturally over the time, over your experience?
I have read books on leadership when I was in residency. There is a book, a Navy veteran. It's called "This Is Your Ship."
Yes.
I don't know if you've heard that one.
Yep, familiar.
Captain D. Michael Abrashoff.
Yes.
He had something very similar in the story. He took a ship in the Navy that was doing poorly and everybody on it sucked. He kind of saw each individual person, and they might have been in the wrong role, and he put their strengths to work. So instead of putting somebody who hates something or not good at it in something and keep having their them just crushed, play them to their strengths. Like, you wouldn't play a wide receiver as a running back. Well, some teams do, but you shouldn't. Right?
Sure.
You gotta make sure that you play them, and then everyone has their strengths and weaknesses. It may be interpersonal skills, it may be just organization, it may be everything, but everybody has a skill set and brings something to the office, and that's what kind of makes it work. But do I actively develop myself as a leader? No, I've just made mistakes. Honestly, you ask every leader, anybody who's did leadership, they've had to make mistakes. They've had to screw up. They've had to make gaffes and embarrass themselves. And really, that's the only way forward. If you want to lead, sometimes you just got to lead, and you're never going to be perfect when you start. I wasn't. And you say it comes naturally to me. It maybe feels like that, but in the beginning, I guess, believe it or not, in high school, I was shy, and I really kind of developed over time to get out of that shell. But I think it's more of the security with yourself when you feel like you are. Well, there's an old African proverb: if there's no enemy within, the enemy without outside can do no harm. So, meaning, if you are secure with yourself, if you're comfortable with yourself, if you believe you did the best you can, you have nothing to worry about. You have no anxiety.
And again, that goes back to, I think what's interesting about what we do with Leading in Dentistry is trying to speak to anyone from the doctor with X number of years of experience to the dental assistant who's coming straight out of high school and this is their first job, right? And trying to speak to things and principles that apply to anyone in that spectrum. And the same principle applies. I mean, someone who's just at the very beginning of the journey is going to feel like they can't make mistakes, especially in dentistry where things are so specific and so systematized in how we do them. And giving them that permission to say, hey, you know what? That person, that other assistant who's got it all figured out, the only reason they got that way was from messing it up this way. It's that, I remember when ask me how I know was like a big phrase when it first, really started. Everybody started saying, ask me how I know,
Yeah.
And there are so many things like, ask me how I know. Like I know this because I've done it and I made that mistake. And you may feel like an idiot and embarrassed, but the only reason I know this is because I've been exactly where you are, So I think that's huge. I think that's such a big thing, is to learn how to be okay with the failure. And a lot of times, unfortunately, we learn by doing. And when we're working with patients, sometimes that's how we learn. And our patients are people too, and they treat us with respect and kindness. And if we're open and honest with them, they will understand when we're doing our best and trying our hardest. And if the dentist is there to kind of act as a safety net to help the other team as they're learning and having their learning experiences, then it's a safe space in order to continue to grow. So, sorry, it sounded like you're going to say something.
Oh, I was going to say that it's a good point you brought up. And most people should realize too, failure is not fatal. Failure is not fatal, and it's not permanent, and it's part of life. You can't go throughout life without failing. And to your point, a lot of dentists, especially younger dentists, they want to be perfect. They come out of school very they puffing out their chest, thinking they're bad until they get they get hit with a something that scares them out of their realm. It happens to everybody. I guess because the podcast here is mostly based on leadership, right?
Yeah.
I guess I was thinking about you because you asked me before, how can how can a team member develop leadership skills? How can you do that? I think you can, not everybody wants to, you can't make somebody want to be a leader either. We can't all be Red Rangers, man. Sometimes you got to be other color Rangers and you got to follow. And playing to the strengths. I have an assistant, my lead assistant right now. She barks orders at me sometimes, and she's like one of the young ones of the team, but I love it. It's funny because obviously, it's like, if it's a good idea, I'll go with it. If it's a bad idea, I'll tell her no. But I admire that, but not everybody, the people I'll be listening to this podcast want to become leaders, but you don't have to force everybody to do that.
And does everyone really need to be a leader? Because I think it's important that business owners and people who are leaders within the practice can help develop other leaders. I think that's important to have that that as a goal. But does everyone need to be in that position, right? Does everyone need to have those aspirations? Or is it just about becoming a leader over what your personal domain is? Like, what am I trying to accomplish in this moment? How can I be the best sterilization tech that I can be, right? And for me, that's a form of leadership. It's not that everyone has to aspire to be the team lead, right? It's more about, how am I, like, everyone is a leader. Even if you don't have anyone who answers to you, you help lead patients through the practice and that kind of thing. But if we're trying to all be aspirational to be the person in charge, I think that's the wrong goal. It's more of, how can I develop those skills that will help me not just be a leader over what I'm doing, but also the other parts of my life.
Maybe ownership, owning what you're doing. I used to tell my staff too, they'd come in, hey, doctor, your patient's ready. And I've been telling them lately, it's our patient. Our patient's ready. Our patient. It's not, you got to be invested in everything we do there. One other point I guess I'd bring up too, that can probably help some of your listeners. I know the whole dynamic of husband-wife duo in dentistry, where one's a receptionist or office manager to this. The way my wife and I work, and we work great together. We don't cross into each other's lanes. She's entirely the business. I'm the clinical, what we need in the office side, and we just make it work. We don't cross each other. I think a lot of people fight over this, like who's the top dog, and we just go in lockstep together.
Mm-hmm.
I there's no way I could have done this without her. She's just I guess luck plays a lot into it. But what did Dr. Fung tell us? Our clinical dean, he said the most expensive purchase you make after dental school is not your house, it's your spouse.
And what's interesting is I think that dentists are oftentimes very siloed creatures, right?
Yeah.
How many times have you heard something where someone says, "Oh, if it's not like this, then you got to get out of there. Start your own thing." And that's great, and I'm big on that. But also, we're so quick to rush to say, like, I can be the head honcho, that oftentimes we overlook the opportunities to work well with other people, right? I have a buddy who he is CEO of a small-ish company, and he was telling me about his struggles in his role. And I was thinking, you know what, like in other businesses, you have to learn how to work well with other people that are different than you. And if we can learn to do that as dentists, that's awesome. And I think that if you're working with your spouse, it kind of it forces your hand to be in that situation where you have to learn to be flexible and not have it your way all the time. And I think that that's a good muscle to develop. And for other members of the team, that's their day-to-day. That's the way that they show up to work every day, is not being the one who's going to call the shots, but being able to make the most out of the situation that they're given and work with the team that they have. Right.
Yeah. We talk about what a leader, on your podcast, I noticed you talk about what a leader is. I'm curious to see what you would say a leader isn't, because I've seen younger dentists with arrogance, and they kind of have to tell that they're in charge, and it just really takes away from them being in charge. But have you seen and heard or have any examples of, I guess, people who did leadership wrong? Because learning what to do right is good, but learning what not to do is also equally good.
Sure, that's a great question. One of the best books that I've read recently is How to Lead When You're Not in Charge by a guy named Clay Scroggins. Like, I am not an owner dentist. I am an associate, and I started this specifically while I'm not an owner because I say this in every podcast at the beginning. I want to get across the message that you don't need to wait until you're in charge to be a leader. And so in this book about how to lead when you're not in charge, he talks about the difference between leading by authority and leading by influence. And I think true leadership is when you lead through influence. And if you're able to leverage your influence to lead others and to take a vision of how things could be and translate those so that someone else understands the clarity of that vision and helps you accomplish it, that for me is leadership. So that's like a lot to unpack there, but a leader is someone who has a vision in their mind and can help other people help make that a reality of on whatever small scale that is. And a good leader for me does that through influence and not authority. Someone who has to do things through authority says, I call the shots because I hold the position. But if you can do that, accomplish
and
that.
Nothing's worse than hearing that from somebody. Nothing's more cringy.
Yeah, exactly.
For all you young leaders, aspiring leaders out there, don't do that. Don't do that.
In the story, in the book, he talks about having an internship. I think it was in the state of Georgia, in the governor's office, and he's outside of the room where there's a big fight going on. A big argument between the governor and a couple of the people that he's working with, and he just overhears someone saying, "I am the governor of the state of Georgia. This is how it's going to be done." And so he said, that is not what we're going for in the type of leadership, at least that we're working to accomplish, right? It's not saying I am this position, therefore respect what I say. It is through my actions, through the heart, through the trust that I've developed, through our history together. That is what develops that relationship. That's the ability for you to leverage that influence to be the leader that you want to be, the type of leader we aspire to be, right?
Yeah, definitely. That's a funny story, and let me guess how that turned out.
Exactly. Exactly. And how that
Probably as well.
relationship proceeds from there, right? I mean, after
Yeah.
that, it's just more of the same of trying to be
And
the
they
person
resent
in
you. They
charge.
resent you for that because now they're just like, this guy has no, the respect. The respect's not
Mhm.
there. The foundation for leadership is going to be built on respect and trust. And I doubt they had either.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
yeah.
So before we go, I wanted to just ask you real quick. You talked about the assistant that's been with you since the beginning, right?
Mm.
You said she's one of the younger ones, but she has taken a position of leadership or at least authority over her role. And you've allowed her to become that team lead, that lead assistant, right? So if you could just speak a little bit about how you've helped create space for her to develop and what things make a difference. So if there's someone out there in that position saying, I do want to flourish as a leader, I do want to be more of that team lead, or at least be the person who could step into that role. It's never about aspiring to the role, but if the role is available, you want to be considered. And what are the things you need to do in order to be that person who could slide right into that position?
I guess, it just comes from attitude. I think the respect came from that she's seen me and my wife struggle to get this place up and running. People will say like, "Oh, you're like family when you build a practice," but it really does become like that. That trust and respect. But it's unique. Like it comes down to personality, man. It's not really like, can you train someone to be that? Some people can, some people can't. And I'm sure everybody to some capacity could be a leader, could
Mm-hmm.
own something and do that. But it's going to be different styles of leadership. I always encourage her to go into dental school. I think she'd be a fantastic dentist. And I always talk to her about this. And she brings up, she's curious about the cases and the x-rays. She asks questions that not normally, you can tell when people are interested, when they're,
Mm-hmm.
just doing a job. And I think that happened. Actually, I should add something too. A couple of months ago, my office has picked up quite a bit. We're taking a lot more patients. I don't know, naturally without like, advertising, we're probably hitting over 100 patients a month, just new patients. And
Wow.
we're one of the few here taking Delta. So the overflow stressed out my staff. You also have to make sure to fill positions. You can't function if you're understaffed. I hired somebody to help us out, and they live down the street. And this particular person was an older gentleman, and he's 60. In his past life, he managed a bunch of department stores, so he has that leadership skills there too. So we brought them in our office, and immediately, a lot of things I learned from him: the attitude, how to do this, because he has a perspective of leading and running
Oh yeah.
businesses. That's been a godsend, man. Like it's like having a another clone of me out here too, helping the office. Because I actually 2 months in, I made him assistant office manager to kind of help out the office, and he's just wonderfully taken that role. So just know when to grow as well. I guess that's another thing. Is the segue. I know you were looking at like developing leadership. Yeah, sometimes finding it and plugging a hole. You don't have to shape it yourself. Sometimes you just find the shape and you put it in the hole that it fits in the shape.
That's
You don't
right.
necessarily have to just say, okay, here you become a star now. No, it's life isn't like that. It's not clean. It's messy. It's dirty. We've gone over that, man.
Mm-hmm.
But it worked. And it's continuing to work out in my office. So I'm really fortunate for that.
I think something that you've touched on a couple of times is that aspiration to
Mm-hmm.
do a little extra is not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily what it's all about. I mean, we also really need, in the book Radical Candor, she talks about the difference between rock stars and superstars. A lot of times we'll say rock star, like that person's a rock star, they can do anything.
Yeah.
She uses it a little bit differently. She says rock stars are the people that you can solidly, consistently depend upon. They're solid
Yeah.
as a rock, is what she says.
Yeah.
Then you have the superstars, which are, they're the ones that are out in the front and having a little bit of that, what we traditionally think is leadership skills. But
Yeah.
being that rock star, that solid as a rock, is just as important in the way that the office functions and the way that the team
Absolutely.
functions, and in a way that is its own form of leadership, where you're a person who's not necessarily, like, a leader doesn't have to get in front of everybody and pull them. A leader can get behind and help push and help
Sure.
be alongside. And
Oh yeah. If
the rock
we're
stars
running behind,
provide
I
that.
clean chairs, I break down things, I help
Mhm.
with sterilization. I know how to do everything in my office. That's another thing too. If people starting in an office, know how to do everybody's job. because they, one thing, they'll never hold it over you and use it as a threat to say, I'm quitting, I'll do this. And then you're just like, oh, hold on. Like you have a gun to your head.
Mhm.
No, I can teach anybody to do anything because I know how to do everything.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I want to be respectful of your time. Before I do let you get back to it, what parting words would you say? Is there, if you had to give one message to future leaders or developing leaders or someone who's just trying to take it to the next level, what advice and mentorship do you have for them?
From my personal experience, be smart, but also you have to take risks. If you want something you've never had, you're gonna have to do things you've never done, and that's scary. And if you do things that are scary and you believe that you will figure it out, even if you don't have the answers right now, that you are smart enough or capable enough to find those answers, you will do it. In my case, we took a chance on this place. We were in a lot of debt, not much money coming in, and we figured it out. If you really want something bad enough, you're going to have to be uncomfortable. Comfort, it takes away innovation. Comfort takes away drive. And if you do have momentum, keep that momentum. The next thing, if you stop and you rest and you stay still, you're going to lose that momentum. You're going to lose that motivation, and you're not going to do something with it. Me and my wife are always talking about a second practice in my hometown. That's the next step. But we're planning, we're thinking of things, we're making ourselves move, and things that might be scary, but pushing ourselves, growing. And that's just what it has to be. You'll never be the leader you want to develop into if you play it safe and you stay and confine yourself into an imaginary box that you put yourself. One of my favorite quotes, most limitations are self-imposed. We set ourselves in limits and boxes that are imaginary. Who says you can't do this? Who says, short of breaking the law, you can do anything you set your mind to, as long as you're willing to sacrifice for it, as long as you're willing to fight for it, as long as you're willing to lose sleep over it and obsess over it, you can get anything. And that's just what it takes.
Well, I really appreciate it again. Always good to catch up, and we should do it again. Online, offline, I don't care. I love seeing you. I love hearing from you.
Likewise, Wes. I'm really proud of what you're doing here and helping the next generation of dentists. I want to help too, but mostly in fighting insurance companies from taking advantage of younger dentists and keeping private practice. One more thing I add, get involved in your local dental societies. Get involved in the conversations. Don't be a sheep and hide in your castle, and give back to those behind you, because that's probably what you would have wanted. You have to continue to do that. Otherwise, the profession's going to really suck in 20, 30 years from now. And if we don't help the ones behind us, we're also going to fall into traps too. And that's what's happening in the dental profession, unfortunately.
Are there any resources real quick that you'd recommend to anybody trying to get involved with that kind of thing?
Just look up your local dental society for the region you're in. For me, it's the Monterey Bay Dental Society. I'm the director for Santa Cruz County here, and I'm always trying to come up with new things that get increased membership and just make things better for our members. So just be involved, put yourself out there. Yeah, it sucks. Yeah, you'd rather be at home watching Netflix, but make time for it. It's important. We work a lot in our lives. You might as well have a say in how our profession's going. And right now we need leaders in CDA and ADA more than anything. Like we need new leadership. We need new ideas. So get out there and do it.
And it starts with developing the leadership skills at home, right in front of you, right?
Yep.
But one of the things we always say at the very end of every single podcast is always be leading and always be learning. And I feel like you're a great example of that, where you're putting yourself out there, you're getting involved with the things that you're passionate about, and you take that passion to your team. So I just want to say thank you one more time, especially, you're not just in scrubs, you got the gown on and everything. You got the loops on, you're good to go. And
I'm ready to fight, man. Always.
This is
always
absolutely in the trenches leadership, and I appreciate it.
Yeah.
But
right.
Again,
I appreciate your friendship, Wes. I'm really proud of what you're doing in this podcast, and hopefully you can reach out and help people who really need this inspiration, this guidance from you.
Thanks, man.
All right.
Well, to everybody else out there, always be leading and always be learning. We'll see you next time.
Right. Take care.
And that's it for this episode of the Leading in Dentistry podcast. If you learned something today, please leave a 5-star review and share the episode with a friend. If you're ready to take the next step for yourself or provide leadership training for a team member, visit leadingindentistry.com to check out our online courses and one-on-one coaching.